Week 4 of training comes with its very own luxurious night march under the skies and stars of the Aether high above, each man carrying his own weight in pack form. Yoongi actually sweats his way through this despite the instructor asking him not to overdo it. He also asks himself what the hell the brass was thinking, but that's a question nobody can answer. Jinho gives him a little hand in secret, and later the two share a gourd of water. No, not like that. Get your heads out of the gutter, soldiers. No yaoi. Bad. After a moment in which Jinho shows just how bad his people skills are, and then their march break ends and it's back to the grind. Big Gi is left dumbfounded for a moment when Jinho makes a joke, but is quickly drowned out by the harsh morning sun rising over mountainous crests. When he finally makes it, Gi looks like he's about to relieve a bad case of constipation and is yelled at to lower his voice in the daylight. Cloudy skies far above, Jinho listens as the poor bro is missing his brother and grandma. That made him remember the time way back in the old days before he'd even known of Jung Yuen, to when he lost his family and had to live alone. He thought he could do as such and survive that way, but let me tell you folks, that's a lot easier to say than it is to do. Humans, we ain't meant to live alone. But this is action tune, not sad tune. Let's find some more, shall we? Later that day, Jinho is in the battalion commander's office asking what a certain Chairman Jung is doing here. And short answer, Jinho, it's 4 PM. Time for your anti-sickness magic. Well, Jung is a little disappointed that Jinho would forget something like this, and he might just see him as a bag of cash. Not true. The old man asks why he'd come to the military now. Jinho wants to live a normal life and it's better to get this out the way now. The chairman begins to understand him just that wee bit better, and for the moment, he congratulates her boy on finishing basic training. Later that day, it's off to the real ranks with them big old trucks, with both Jinho and Gi going to the same unit. The rest of the boys try getting his number so they could all meet up and hang during the 100-day break, and he gives it with a genuine smile for the first time in front of the other soldiers. The boys are wished all the luck as they leave for the true military experience, and Jinho is told to be thankful they're in the same unit as Big G. That's never getting old. But being in the same battalion doesn't mean you'll be together a lot of the time. Meanwhile, Han Se-eun and Park are having drinks out, and he's teased a bit for worrying about her because of Jinho. Then she admits that until recently she'd hated him being so dense. She even cried a lot by herself. But then she took some time to think about it, and it made her bring something up in memory. Him staring up at the sky, lost. And then it came back to hit her. Maybe he's just not in a position to think of anything else right now. Maybe they just met at the wrong time. Love will transpire when the time is right. And for now, she can at least move on. Meanwhile, Battery Commander Jinnam is breaking the new boys in, and after the squad leaders arrive and these two are taken away, Jinho is basically harassed with questions on arrival to his new dorm room, though they lose points for picking on the still fresh private first class with glasses that's already there. And it seems like that was right on the money, because in the next miniature panel, we learn that the dude's favorite pastime is picking on those below him, namely Jinho and Taeho. The dude had already lived in a hierarchy system, so he knew how to bend the rules. To him, the guys below were just playthings. Oh, I knew this D-head was bad news. He comes to try and poke some fun at Jinho's knowledge and says Taeho behind him would get punished for each question that Jinho got wrong, as he was the one in charge of tutoring the Red Demon. All questions? Correct. Taking a look at his cabinet, perfectly spotless in every way. The floor? Polished to a reflective shine with nothing but the rag given to him. Strike 3. He's out. Mr. D over here, that is now his name, is huffing, puffing, and getting ready to blow some houses down on the track. He brought Jinho out to teach him a lesson. In what? How big an idiot you are? And challenged him to a 50-lap competition in which they'd already done 20. But even now he's still getting outrun. Mr. D does track and field, and 20 laps is about 6 kilometers. After wearing out a literal athlete, the dude's commander asks if he's some kind of marathoner, but no, Jinho is just a college boy. Taeho tells him as a private first class that tomorrow is his first training, so he'd best be sharper than usual from the start. I swear, if he needs to use 1% of his actual strength, y'all are pretty dead already. The first thing he's shown when on the field the next day is his new best friend for a couple years, the 155mm howitzer. Jinho decides to learn while he's on the field, and suddenly it makes sense why martial arts vanished. The 15-kilometer normal range, 25-meter lethal radius, that's 9.3 miles and 82 feet respectively. Saturate an area with this, ain't no kicks or punches saving you. The commander actually gets a glimpse of Jinho when he's frightened of something, which is a rare sight in of itself. For now, he started off by being taught how to use the jack screw. These giants are like 7 tons, so they would have to be careful during operations. Or not, given how Jinho almost breaks the shaft on his own, and then proceeds to pick up 3 artillery shells like they weigh nothing while the other guys struggle with a single each. The guys are so demoralized by the end, they just turn on the TV to begin sweeping away their troubles. Which is fair enough when your super soldier squad mate was called the Terminator at basic training. And on TV, they're about to show a rising star singer who's debuting. Top tier in dancing, singing, having a nice body. Don't look at me like that, James. It's literally what they say. And then Jinho looks at the TV to see who this new singer really is. Gang Eun-young. Secretary Cho gets a phone call not too much later. He asks about Eun-young's career choice. And here we see a case of really overprotective brother who got the weight to back up his words. It seems that Jinho isn't appreciative of the way his sister is portrayed and would like quite the retcon from poor secretary who, smartly, doesn't say that he's the one who advised this for her. In the end, he discussed it with his family when they came to visit him on base. He really gives her a piece of his mind, and Papa Gang agrees that the way she conducts herself as a student is a bit much for her age. Oof, Korea be like. But while she does try to fight him on it, Pops gives us a little nugget that maybe Park isn't doing so well back at home. Oh? Eunyoung asks if he's really dating Park then, but gets stonewalled into oblivion with the most emo Easter Island face I have ever seen. He's somehow scarier than their father these days. While he's on break soon, he should pay the kid a visit and see what be going on. But for now, his mother had prepped the biggest meal he'd had since leaving, and they were all gonna enjoy. And on his first day off, Jinho is planning to take the bus back to Seoul Station when who else but the secretary shows up in a fancy black car. Giving both Jinho and Big Gi a ride, they head off back into the city and his first sight of civilization in a long time for the 100 days break. Cho asks if the guy leaving was a friend he had made in the military, and yes, Big Gi was indeed. Such a polite guy for all his rough charms. For now though, Jinho would be taken home by his request from where he immediately goes to the orphanage to see Park. The kids flood Jinho as he enters, having missed him. Though the air around the orphanage seems different to last time he had been there, denser and tenser. Park comes out, and after he's sufficiently teased because of the baby on his back, Jinho learns that the director who would normally be there got taken away to the hospital. There, she was diagnosed with stage 4 stomach cancer. Immediately, the good boy gets her hospital address to go check on her. He goes up the lobby, through the elevators, and knocks on her door. She's awake at least and invites him in on recognition of who it is. He's become quite the man since she'd last seen him. Sister Lee Hye-suk, a nun with a warm heart and the woman who ran the place that raised Park from child to where he is today. She asks about his military service. Jinho claims it's fairly easy. She's surprised since most people claim it's hard. That's what she said. And Jinho claims they're surely exaggerating. No, they're not. You're just tough as Bruce Banner. Jinho uses his protagonist, TM vision, to peer inside the old woman's stomach and see the cancer. Oh dear. I don't think anyone is walking away from a parasite like, well, the kind editor will probably show you. For the first time, Jinho encounters a sickness that he can't solve at his current level. So that's a fail on the initiative roll. Got it. The old lady makes sure he'll take care of Park should anything happen to her, but of course, it seems God's will is for her to come to the afterlife. I'll hold my tongue there, but even though the children still need her at the orphanage and she would be heartbroken to leave, she accepts that loss has to come someday. Right now, there's no way Jinho could possibly help, as a single wrong move is just going to make everything worse. Finally, his old self reignites his passion to do something about this, and the man gets up to excuse himself, probably going to the training montage. Cho rightfully asks why Jinho wanted all the information on the orphanage so suddenly, and he's told of the sister's illness. The Jaekyung Corporation could only support them so much right now, as many shareholders were starting to levy complaints. For now, Jinho would pay the money. Cho's job would be finding a better hospital to move the sister to, and a caretaker while she was out. After that, Jinho visits to ask the sister if she'd like to change to a new location, one in specific that's closer to the orphanage where the children are able to visit her. She says that's a bit too greedy of her. Greedy? Greedy? Lady, you're on your deathbed. You got every right to be greedy right now. Jinho shares the sentiment, asking, and I quote, "Isn't showing effort for those who are left behind also a valuable effort?" Couldn't have said it better myself. But even through the ancient woman's arguments, even though he wants her to live so badly, Jinho has yet to understand. Why? Why does he want to save her? For Park Yoo-min? For the children? Maybe because you just don't want to see someone suffer the way you did, my man? A note from our writer. I've seen firsthand someone suffer like this, and the worst feeling is knowing you can do nothing. At least he has a chance. End note. The sister then breaks his thoughts by coughing, vomiting up blood. Within mere hours, she's put into the Jaekyung hospital. Jinho pays a visit that night and takes off his coat, looking down at the poor lady resting in bed with the breathing apparatus. He had studied cancer for this, and now it was time to put his methods to work. Placing a hand on her stomach, the best he can do against the poisonous chi is burn around it with fire chi and kill off the active cancer cells. Her body is at its limit, so he's got to do this carefully and slow. And after much trial and zero error later that night, he does it. Now all he had to do was leave the rest to modern medicine and she'd have a big fighting chance. In the morning, the doctor has a surprised Pikachu face while staring at the charts he'd received. A terminal patient just recovered. Magically. Overnight and reverted to stage 3? Power of protagonist, baby! He then says aloud that the patient's condition has improved significantly, and that now there may actually be something they can do beyond keep her on life support. In this state, they may even be able to get away with surgery, which makes Park tear up and hug the old lady out of joy. Park thanks Jinho for coming back, but the sister then wishes to speak with him alone out in the hallway. The sister apologizes for having him use his break like this. Wait, what? He did this on his own, lady, not because you asked for it. But then this takes an interesting turn. She recognizes that not long ago there was nothing they could do, yet today she's suddenly fit for surgery. Is there something he's hiding from her? She knows he was lying and she won't pry if it's something he really doesn't want to talk about. But even though she doesn't know him nor anything about his lives, she does give him a good piece of sage advice. He doesn't have to push himself so hard. There's no need to take on the burden for everything. Very, very true. People can't always do things on their own, and sometimes you need help. During his past lifetimes, he had always told himself to keep moving, and that would be his one lifeline through it all. The fact that he had never stopped inching towards something. But once he lost sight of what that fate was, there was no getting around anymore. He would soon reach the limits of what his personal power could do. That, my friend, is where coexistence comes into play. It's about acknowledging that we need other people. Who says that you have to do everything alone? Quick note, anyone that does, you are wrong. After this, Jinho is basically sent home to be with his family for the remainder of his time here until the next day when he has to return to service. Why is the 100-day break so short, his sister complains. Shouldn't it be 100 days like the name says? I don't know how that works either, so I'm not commenting. Jinho climbs into the car and meets face to face with Park, who had come to see him off. He's huffy at Jinho going behind his back to prep everything to aid the orphanage. But at least we learn the surgery is going on in 3 days. While he's driving, the honorable secretary admits that he sees through Jinho a bit more than he lets on now, and can see the worry in his eyes. Not to worry, Cho would take care of everything instead of his militant friend. This is what coexistence means, brother. Gotta rely on someone else. After Jinho is back on base and getting settled back into his routines, the boys prompt him repeatedly for how his trip went, and how how his sister is. Horn dogs be horny. Interrupting them, in comes a dude from one of the much higher ranks who calls attention. The boys all hop to and are told that the division command will be awarding 10-day breaks to all squads to receive best in this training. But of course, this isn't an internal competition. They'd better not lose to them infantry boys, understood, soldiers? Oh boy, we got another nutcase. But it's okay because they got a secret weapon on their side, and we all know his name. In the Korean military, there's this term called a halfway crisis, a term that describes commonly occurring breakups that happen to soldiers around halfway through their service. Poor dude is dealing with some rough times, it seems. Cut to his superior checking that Jinho knows what these breaks mean to the other men, and the corporal who's having love issues comes up behind them to have a quick word with Jinho. He ain't letting this boy slack off during this round of ranger training. He's gonna do everything he can to achieve best squad, and later when the ranger training actually comes to town, everybody is lying on their back with legs up and together in some kind of exercise practice. Someone knowledgeable in the comments, please explain what this training works in the body. Private number 8 is really struggling here, and he's asking himself why they're putting him through this when his service ends really soon. While everyone else is struggling to so much as lift their legs, Jinho just be chillin' and listening to the instructions like a podcast. My dude got such a relaxed face, you swear he does this for a lazy Sunday warm-up. 16, 17, 18, moving on. But after his previous display and overperforming act earlier that day, Jinho got to sit out the next bit of this training while his superiors had to go through the same stuff. Oof, mates. But here comes the real meat of this, where our boy is back in the ring. Trench training. For a split second, I thought Jinho had a brother in this scene. Editor, you see what I mean, right? Right? I hope so. Anyhow, besides the corporal being mad within the first minute of training and getting yeetus deletus from the arena, we got possibly a good challenger for our boy. He takes one look at the weak bodies on the enemy team and says that the boss don't even need to do anything himself. And then he spots Jinho. Guy gets caught and held like he's a rat in a trap by possibly the scariest person there. And then he notices the squad leader on the other side of him. You done goofed it up this time, boyo. That's what you get for being overconfident. Without a care in the world, he just ragdolls them out of the arena. The next day, it's map reading, which is a simple competition about getting to the designated position faster than everybody else. Only one person needs to reach the position, and Jinho would be that one person. Darting through the trees like a freak of nature, a new record is set at 3 minutes 23 seconds. That's half the time of their squads, meaning this win is a landslide. Day 3 is gas chamber training, which just gives us a good long glimpse into hell. Jinho was ordered to hold everyone inside the gas chamber and disregard any words his squad leader says while they're inside, probably to stop the guy trying to leave early. I swear, this is like looking after children. Jinho had also built up an immunity to this stuff back in his basic, it seems. On the last day of this hellish ranger training, the boys are marching through the woods. The break is right ahead of them, yells the commanding officer to inspire his boys. They yell back in camaraderie, but everyone is tired and long overdue for a good rest. Right now, Jinho is the only one who looks okay, and even the instructors are freaking out about this. Still marching by evening, Taeho has the last of the water within his gourd, and his commanding officer warns him that they have miles ahead of them to walk. They call for the squad leader since the poor boy ain't looking too good. The SL has to make a call here since the company commander said they've basically earned that break so long as there ain't no stragglers, and then the kid collapses out of stress and exhaustion. Everyone stops and rushes back as he falls to the floor. Taeho basically seeing white at this point as his overworked body burns. Even the big commanding officer in red comes back to see what's going on, asking what's happened. Taeho says he's willing to complete this march and they get 10 minutes to rest. The squad leader wonders what to do, as they will obviously never put the break above a person's life. But if they miss best squad, everyone will blame him for it. Then Jinho comes up behind the leader and asks if he can help the kid through the rest. Time to play a good soldier, boy. Picking up Taeho over his shoulders, Jinho carries his fellow soldier like a human scarf with relative ease. My dude just became a training weight to the pro tag. The squad lead says he doesn't have to do this much to get them to the end. Just let the poor guy down. Fine then. Moving on, Taeho apologizes for what happened back there while they continue marching through the night, and the boy still feels horrible, like he wants to lay down. He knows everyone would hate him for slowing them down, but that would still be better than walking. No, it wouldn't. Taeho has some water that Jinho has barely touched, and he's caught up as he stumbles over a rock. Shippers, be gone. James, watch the comments. Corporal Jun is helping him up, and the squad leader says that he can give up if he really can't do this. Nobody would hold it against him. They're all in the same squad after all. But this sparks the boy's passion, and he's ready to finish this, regardless of his tiredness. They're all in this together as soldiers. Come on, boys, just a bit farther. Our riders need some better action to use around here. It's not surprising that after that march, they were elected as the best squad, and Jinho was chosen as the best soldier, so he'd earned an extra 10 days off. If they count his extra scheduled break with all that, it would go from 20 to 30 days, a full month of service break. A few changes after that training happened in his military life as well, such as a promotion to private first class. Second was that he was no longer the newest guy in the ranks. Jinho gives the poor kid a rundown, telling him the bed is still dirty. His fellow soldiers warn him not to be so harsh with the new guy, and their squad lead assigns Taeho to take care of the new guy for the time being. Then Jinho gets a call at the administration office. When he answers with military designation and the like, it's Park Yu-min who is calling about something regarding Sister Lee. Oh no. After hearing some sad news about her, at least that's what I get from seeing his face, Jinho promises to try getting out as soon as possible. He asks the sergeant if he could start his break a bit earlier than anticipated. Secretary Cho is already waiting for him outside the gate when Jinho goes to leave, ready with a car to take him away. They confirmed Sister Lee is doing better after her surgery, but her condition had recently relapsed and put her into a terrible state. And is there absolutely no chance of her getting any better? Well, all Cho can really do here is apologize. He had said to leave the rest to him, yet it all turned out like this. But it wasn't his fault. Despite his protagonist's words here, it ain't Jinho's fault either. Sometimes these things just happen. He's taken straight to the hospital where Park is waiting, and the boy also seems to think that it's his fault. The two of them go up the building through elevators and manage to get to her room in record time. The sister is lying back in bed in horrible condition, her skin paler than before, and pipes sticking out of her nose. She asks to have a few words alone with Jinho, who takes a seat and holds her hand. It's so cold. There's nothing he can do to help anymore. Back that night, she had realized he did something to her. She just wanted to tell him that the feeling was warm and soft. Warm? The power that he obtained through blood was warm? Yeah, because it didn't matter how you got it. It matters how you use it. He'd done so much and she was sorry to show him such a miserable face. But just like the kindness he had shown her, reminding that people do still care about this sickly old lady, she hopes that he can grow. When he comes out of the room, the sister had fallen asleep, and they should start heading back to the orphanage. Jinho walks off, leaving Park to think about his friend. Later that night, while all the cute children are asleep, he sits alone on a bench nearby. Park had gotten the two of them some nice cold drinks, and the young adult thanks him for coming. Why aren't the kids sad about this though? You'd think they would be the most affected ones, but as Park rightly and kind of morbidly points out, they're all used to losing someone already. When you live in an orphanage, you just get used to things not going as you want them to. Why is he the one making more of a sad face at the question? Oof, got you there, bro. But anyway, Park now has to go back to his game practicing to earn money for the orphanage. Oh, he's drunk. Okay. Oof. But this makes Jinho start to question his life choices. He doesn't want to live normally. He just wants to live a life different than what he had before. The only thing that's changed about him since way back when was the realization that he cannot live alone. He has to rely on other people to survive in coexistence. When he's back in the military, Jinho is again called to the administration office for a phone call, and it's Park once more. But this time with the sad news we were all expecting. Unfortunately, Sister Lee had passed away a few moments ago. Jinho is sorry that he couldn't be there with Park in this trying time, and the kid asks why he would be sorry. They could just visit her together when he got out. Thinking back to her words, Jinho remembers everything the kind old woman had said to him to the point she was no longer living, especially the hope that he could become a person who would tolerate the weaknesses of others. Jinho then notices that the two of them, him and Park, had never tried to cheer one another up with words, because they knew better than to formally give words of comfort. May the old lady finally rest in peace, as her long fight with the world was finally over. And back on track, Jinho asks the new rookie why he's not been done with his washing earlier. Okay, so that's how you want to segue this, huh? Jinho had told the rookie after his apology that there was no need to hide his mistakes, but Taeho pulls Jinho to one side and says to just leave the new blood alone before he starts getting ideas to go AWOL. And indeed, in the next few frames, we show just how bad Jinho's instructions have gotten. Also, he's apparently a corporal now? What? Okay then, anyway. Out on the range again, their team lead says that the battery is going to have a combat effectiveness evaluation soon, so everyone better be on their toes during training. Their exercise is about setting up the howitzer on location. They have only a few hours to get the 7-ton mass of steel into position. Jinho notices that his private first class isn't feeling so well, but ain't no way he's going to admit it to Mr. Perfect. As the squad lifts the heavy machine, the new guy doesn't feel so well and ends up tripping over his feet. The heavy spade they're carrying is about to crush his leg, but Jinho one hand lifts it out of the way. That thing is 80 kilograms. Later within the dorms, the newbie Jang Jae-hwan is yelled at for not telling his superior officers that he's sick. He was the luckiest man alive that Jinho was with him, or that thing would have done some serious damage. Said protag pipes up that they should leave the poor boy to get some rest, which is a good idea. The corporal would go back and give his report in, while Jinho stayed here to keep an eye on Jang, who thanks him for the save earlier. This whole time, the private first class wasn't sure of him, but after today, he now understood why Jinho kept such a tight ship. He rarely talks, and it's hard to start a conversation with someone who has such a stoic face. Jinho finally realizes that people find it hard to talk to him, and thanks the newbie for telling him this and being honest. He's still got a lot to learn and isn't used to living in any form of group, but he doesn't want to remain like that forever. He wants to change, and that's as good a start as any. But just like that, his time in the military was also starting to come to its close. 9 months later, the cameras are rolling, people are cheering and dancing with signs at a function, and a really pretty girl is up on stage singing her heart out for the masses. Once it's over and Eunyoung climbs into the car with her manager, she gets double messages from someone who just won't seem to give up. Ignoring the dude, she asks the manager to clear her schedule for Wednesday next week as her brother was coming back from his service. Meanwhile, back in the military, Jinho is still being a hard butt to the poor Jang, saying his floor is too dirty. The soldier swears, asking why he's doing this when he's getting discharged the next day. With the rest of the unit behind him, they all yell that Jinho is being a bit too much here and he could just go home if he didn't like it. Turns out Jang is already a sergeant, and then in from the door busts in Taeho, asking the big dude to hide him from the evil squad mates in tow. They're trying to do a celebration beating on him, which they masked as trying to massage his back since he said it wasn't feeling too well. Jang suggests with an evil grin that they try this on Jinho too, but he's called to the battalion commander's office before anything else can happen, and he's very quick to walk out of the room. Guess you just need to put a pep into his step, huh? But despite him leaving right now, he's nothing short of a legend in their battalion, making all the superiors shut the fluff up by being such an overachiever. Not only did he tank all the bad customs of their unit, but he never once did them to the newbies. Besides, they all benefited from his breaks, now didn't they? Soccer, basketball, wrestling, he did them all and dominated every field he was put upon. Yeah, that sounds about right. He just swept up all them prize breaks for his own unit and handed them to his unit on his silver platter. Well, they should at least get ready for his goodbye party. But not with any frozen food, time to bring out the big guns. Delivery. In reporting to the battalion commander's office, Jinho is brought in to have a convo with the head, but strangely they address him as sir, like he's the older one here. That would only be natural, says the commander, as Jinho had indeed lived longer than him as a returner. Oh ho ho, we got one, boys. But there's nothing to fear from this old soldier. He's just a normal person like the dude sitting in front of him, and maybe a marshal. Did Jinho ever really approach him with a sense of purpose? No, but the man's master does find Jinho to be quite special. Once a person has power, they tend to display and use it. But he stayed clear of that during his time here in the military. Despite the fact he was capable of high-tier violence, not once did he ever try and do as such. Anyhow, why does this buffoon of a master want to meet him? To learn everything about him. Yeah, Jinho ain't having none of this. He warns the old man once that he never used his power because it has no place left in this world. But if he's already hallucinating with his little chi, then he ain't a marshal after all. He leaves shortly after and states rather bluntly that ain't nobody messing up his life this time. Waiting outside of their military base is the secretary who congratulates her man on finishing his service. He'd give them both a ride back to the city. On the way, Big E had fallen asleep in the car, and Jinho checks his phone nonchalantly to get the latest news and ads for hotties within 5 kilometers as everyone does, you know. Then he sees something which makes his blood run cold, and poor Cho has to squeak out a reply on where Kang Eun-young is. His parents warmly welcome him home from military service, but when he don't look too well, he shows them the phone as the reason. His mother tells him that his sister should be on stage by now, and when his father sees what's on screen, he basically gives the clear for Jinho to bring her home. Now. Uh-oh. And then his mother sees the phone, wondering what the heck is going on, and it shows Eun-young is dating someone from The Voice? Oh, protective brother, here we come. Her manager tells her that he can pull some strings to change her schedule around this time, but she says she can do it. Changing anything now would only make things even worse. He recedes, and once the broadcast is over, he'd send out some articles. She'd been through so much in becoming a celebrity, and then some crazy man had to go and ruin her whole career just because she said hi to him? Somebody about to pay through their behind here. She only has to hope Jinho ain't found out. Sure, let's roll with that. She goes up on stage to do her performance, deciding to follow her brother's advice and just not give up on her dream. And who should be in the crowd but the scary man himself? I swear, he's pulling a Giga Chad face under that shadow and we just can't see it. She immediately regrets her life decisions. He's telling her to come down off the stage? No. The song is about to start and this is a live broadcast. But he, let's just say, doesn't give her much of a choice in the matter. That dude would give death itself nightmares, I swear. Meanwhile, Cho is giving Chairman Jung the sit rep and they check the TV, as she should be live on stage right now. Yeah, she's live, but not on stage. And she don't look too lively either. The announcers cover for them while Big Brother drags his little sister away to discuss a few things. And Cho just gets cold sweat from thinking of the PR nightmare this is going to cause. Poor Jung is just an observer. He asks what is happening right now, and Cho is doing his darn hardest to get all the details on the situation. There's a live feed interview with her going on right about now, and Jinho is the one answering questions. He basically retires her on the spot. Feels sorry for the girl. And Cho asks the chairman if there's any way he can use company funds to, "Do you want to be fired?" is the only reply. Kang Se-a, the latest rising star in the idol industry. The recent livestream incident basically made her the hottest topic in the entire country. Though unlike how experts predicted that her career was doomed in its infancy from this, the public opinion was slowly tipping in her favor. And all of it was because of Cho Kyu-min, our favorite secretary. One who asks himself why the chairman scared him like that if he was just going to help in the end anyhow. Cho is about to teach that Jun Young guy from The Voice a lesson in who you can and can't mess with. Meanwhile, Mama and Papa Gang are figuring out that the guy was apparently trying to flirt with her. But Jinho isn't having any of this. How does she explain meeting him at the bar? Oh, here we go. She could have just been practicing or rested at her place, but instead she went out drinking? Oh, give it a break, Drill Sarge. You ain't in the ranks anymore. He believes she should be rightfully punished for this and have her quit her job as a singer. Whoa, hold on there, you big moron. Are you about to go and make everyone hate you again? His parents both agree that doing that would be way overkill just for going to a bar. She's an adult. A bit of alcohol is nothing. But that doesn't leave her off the hook for this. It seems their daughter is lacking social experience from going straight to being a singer after high school. So as her punishment, Eunyoung would be working in their cafe instead of being on stage for a time. She'd learn a lesson or two being behind the counter and facing customers in a day of work. Jinho thinks this is too light a punishment, but good old dad shuts him up too by agreeing with me that he ain't in the military anymore. And further to that point, he can't live off of the chairman's funds for the rest of his life either. He should be working too. Their cafe is always accepting resumes. Under the table, mom and dad low-five each other as they now got a reason to shoehorn both their kids into eyesight for the foreseeable future. Clever and not at all manipulative, actual good parents. Gotta love them. Meanwhile, in the FRC agency, Junyoung is talking to his manager about how he shot up in the rankings for creating a scandal, making himself famous overnight. But is he really sure about this? The Jaekyung Corporation backing Seo was sure to take notice of the strings he'd pulled for this charade to work. But he brushes this off since he didn't actually do anything wrong. He was just being a romanticist, and it's not like the Jaekyung can do anything if Seo says she likes him. Spoiler, I don't think she does. The phone of Junyoung's manager rings from his desk, and when the man picks up, he's told he got a visitor from an important place, the Jaekyung Secretariat. Cho Kyu-min has arrived and he's flexing the glasses move, meaning this is a man with a plan. Sitting down with the secretary, Cho opens up that this is some rather nice tea. The FRC manager is thinking that this scrawny little dude can't possibly be the head of the Jaekyung Secretary Department, and yet his card proves everything. Finally, they get to the topic at hand. It seems that Junyoung was a part of a scandal revolving JK's very own Seo. After some investigation, it seems Jun had approached her constantly despite her having no interest. Kang Sea's agency, and of course the VIP within the K who supports her, finds this quite disturbing. By VIP, does he mean Chairman Hwang Jung-hoo? Asks the FRC manager. Cho just cleans his glasses while the manager breaks into a stream of apologies. But Jun tries to play off that he didn't exactly do anything wrong. So he'd just be more careful from then on. You ain't getting away with it that easily, you creep. Because of circumstances, Cho had taken the liberty of doing a few background checks on them. The FRC agency president, Han Sung-gu, had forced his idols to service a bunch of company reps and he'd extorted cash from them under guise of training costs. And Junyoung had quite a history with some of his contestants, not to mention him planning the recent scandal all on his lonesome. Jun tries to say it's a misunderstanding, but again, our favorite secretary isn't listening to this. You miss what they're saying? You get him. She'd put in a world of effort to get to their position, and the Jaekyung had never spent a single penny for her directly. Wow, sister really worked for what she got. Jinho should be a proud big bro. But the point is, Cho knows how hard she'd been working because he was right there with her the entire darn time. This boy showed his fangs to the wrong frickin' person. Time to get what he deserves. Attaboy, Cho, give it to him. But while this is all happening somewhere in China, a certain person is sitting down with a healthy breakfast and watching the news scoop of what had happened in Korea. While they raise the copper spoon to their mouth, the image of Jinho must flash on screen because they drop it then and there. Oh hey, it's that one dude who tailed Jinho from the airport. Wu Yuan. Oh wait, no, now they know his identity, shoot. Showing the picture to his big boss, Sai Ka-chang, says that his subordinate had confirmed it for them. This was the same dude who beat him up so badly. The Red Giant is sure that this demon won't go down so easily, so he's planning to go to Korea himself to take care of this himself. But Sai managed to convince him otherwise, as there's a sleeper he has left in the peninsula. It'll lower their influence in that region, but that's okay. On top of this, they now know his sister is a pop star, so they could even leverage that to... Okay, no they can't. Big guy don't like that. At least he has a moral compass. It seems that Sai really wants this man taken out, since he'd only followed the Red Giant for now. Meanwhile, Cho is considering his life choices as he's forced to do some dishes at the Kung Cafe. having only come there to talk to Jinho. People were piled around the corner for entry, and the boys are staring longingly at Kang Eun-young, hoping that she'll look in their direction. She sweetly replies that she's working right now, but she ain't the only one getting plenty of attention. Jinho is being inundated with compliments and fangirls, despite being the coldest man on the planet. And Park? Well, I'll let your eyes do the work. I know what the author was doing here, but a dress doesn't suit him. Papa Gang is also happy that his children are serving in the cafe, like a dream come true for him. The extra money he's getting from customer retention isn't bad either. Of course, though, Jinho is getting tired of being ogled by every girl in a 10-kilometer radius. Jumping to another park of Korea for some real action at last, the martial union in this country has been contacted with an order to eliminate a certain person. They're willing to pay a hefty price for this, even though their target is a college student? Yeah, a returner who's prepping to go back to school. Even the martial assembly is keeping an eye on this kid, meaning he must pose quite the threat to those around him if he spoke the wrong way. They would call the big guns for this opportunity, someone named Astray. 2 people later go to retrieve this guy for the mission, being in the slums of some back road in fancy tailored suits. One of them didn't want to have to come here again, darn it. His nervousness makes the other dude question just what they were stepping into. He'd best be careful unless he wants to end up on the bang end of a fiery fist of demonic chi. This dude no longer lives like most people in the light. So you're telling me he's a Reddit admin? Sounds right. They enter his room calling out for him and the door closes behind them. The union leader had sent them an order. Yes, it was a killing order, and this dude was now completely alone in the room as his comrade had just gotten slaughtered like a pig in silence. Let's just say Jinho has a nutcase on his trail. Driving at night in his fancy Kia, a guy is telling his girlfriend not to worry so much as he'd only had a few bottles to drink. It should be fine. No, that's not how drinking works. Then he runs a person over and asks why she let him drive drunk in the first place once the car comes to a skidding halt, and the guy gets out to check that they didn't hit anyone. Classic horror movie setup. There's nobody on the roads ahead of them, but he doesn't get to just climb back in and drive away. A clawed hand reaches down and grabs him, and after some horrible screams and murder, the woman asks why he's doing this. They're scaring her, stop it. But if she's really scared, then she should scream for him a bit more. That ain't a human anymore, Chief. That's a sleep paralysis demon. Meanwhile, in the Gun Cafe, Jinho is taking a short break from his involuntary service and having a gloomy expression while doing so. Some people come here just to see him, and he could smile a lot more to brighten their days. He's not a puppet, you dolts. A few girls take selfies with the morbid-looking dude while he remembers the last family meeting. Eun-young was allowed to go back to work a lot more and took on a casting offer from a TV show, while he was still stuck working 3 days a week. Skepticism started to become his normal. But the drop in sales wasn't because of her leaving. It was more likely because of the nearby murders too horrific for any human to have pulled off. A girl called Jae-in then comes in to place her order, and the old man gives her a bit extra like usual, having Jinho take the order to her to put an end to his whining. He's a VIP of this place that used to come before they got popular, and she'd also likely want a few pictures with him just for the kicks. He takes the order and gets her business card. The lady is an illustrator who normally draws stuff for web novels. All of the covers feature him. I'm pretty sure that's highly illegal because, as he mentions, portrait rights. But his daddy-o gave the permission. People always told her that her male characters had no charm, though that stopped ever since she started using him as a reference. Now the problem is her drawing the same face all the time, though it's not like she has much choice, she says. She opens the folder of Mr. Model over here and the contents are monotone enough to scare even his own father. Oh, come on now, it can't be that bad. Apparently it is though, enough that his dad basically orders him to strike some poses for the woman to photograph and uses more references. Later that day, when she's done with all her stuff and is packed up to leave, the woman begins walking home and his dad says to be proud. He did a good thing today. Yeah, he did. But unfortunately that kind lady isn't going to be drawing anymore, because she runs into a stray on the way home and gets clawed presumably to death. His dad decides to go out with a few friends that night, saying Jinho should take a taxi home that night. Jinho tries to protest that it's in walking distance, but no, taxi. The murderer is out there. But while he goes out for a walk and thinks about the day's activities, specifically how such a thing is happening within such close proximity to his own family, the protagonist catches the scent of blood on the wind. He follows the scent through the streets and back roads to a park nearby where it gets clear enough that he's sure it's here somewhere. And then he spots her. The mangled corpse of Jae-in, blood everywhere. Her glasses and camera fallen from limp hands, and a body probably without its head, which we don't get to see thankfully. To think this could have happened to a person so nice as her? It's sickening what some creeps will do to good people. Her outstretched hand drips blood from the bricks and we fade into the scene of Jinho and his old man in the police station answering some questions. There's nothing they can tell the cops beyond what can be found out themselves. Papa Gong looks solemnly at his son, sad that the boy had to see something like that after just meeting her. Once the incident was confirmed as one in the chain and a serial killer had been identified, things in the area changed rapidly. People barely wandered out during the day, and the customers they had dropped off sharply. Jinho hears some gossip already spreading of the last victim of the murderer coming to this very cafe. Maybe they ought to be careful too. Probably, unless you want to end up as a corpse. Someone is going to pay for messing with Jinho's life again. But before that, a cute girl in her floral dress comes wandering in looking for him. They don't talk to reporters, but she isn't one. Doesn't he want to know? The culprit behind this incident? Oh, she's smart. And out back, she explains that she's come to meet him as a member of the Korean Martial Assembly. They're interested in having a friendly relationship with Jinho, which, after seeing what he can do, no, yeah, fair enough. He's much less than appreciative of the darn marshals coming into his life again, and he's getting mighty sick of having to repeat himself over and over again. Does he really look like that much of a joke to them? Are they just going to ignore his words over and over? Did she think he would react with joy if they stepped in using the information as a bargaining chip? It looks as if the incident is related to their people. He pins her to the wall with repressed rage bubbling to the surface for the first time in a while and asks straight up to the fearful lady, do they really want him to be a part of their world? Can they really handle the red demonic master returning to them? Cho meanwhile is tapping his steering wheel and wondering about the murdering incident, hoping for dear life that Jinho wasn't behind it. No, it couldn't be him. He wouldn't be this sloppy nor reckless of a person, surely. He stops somewhere and gets out, only to see Jinho coming out of an alleyway with the girl he just choked half to death. Is he dating? Nah, Chief, those eyes say something much different. This looks really bad. And then the glare turns to the poor secretary who loses another 100 years of his life. All the rage just evaporates upon seeing Cho there. When he asks who she is, Jinho says that he should start talking about certain things with him and this girl. They all go into the store much to his dad's surprise, as he'd only seen Jinho leave with the girl. When Jinho asks to use the back room so they could all have a chat, his father reminds him that he's still on the clock, but since it's something that's somewhat important, he lets it slide. Not like they have many customers today anyhow, but the girl is going to use the restroom before they have any kind of chat. Huh, he scared her that bad? Fair. When she does take an eternity, Cho suggests that maybe she's running away, but that won't be the case. In a nutshell, she's probably going to ask her superiors for help with this problem. And as we see in one of the next frames, he's right on the money. She's also wondering what the flip is wrong with Jinho and why he just up and strangled her like this. Why was he so angry at her? What the heck did she do to him? Well, there is one person she can call. A buff-tan dude picks up the phone and asks if she's finally ready to go out with him. Nope, guess again. She needs him for a job around now. But although he's not interested at first, as soon as she mentions she could get beaten to death, all the water in his pool evaporates and he's shortly on his way. She's then explaining to Jinho the differences between the martial groups in Korea. There's one she's a part of, the Martial Assembly, and their rivals, the Yeongnam Union. The rivals are the most influential group on Korean soil. Cho gets the gist that the Yeongnam Union had likely sent an assassin over to kill Jinho. But then why were other civilians being targeted and not Jinho himself? Well, because this assassin is a nutcase who's lost it. They call him a stray and he's basically their hunting dog. They aren't just letting it fly, but there's only so much they can do when their rival's leader declines any part of involvement, even if it was as obvious as plain daylight. They know of a stray's work because they had to clean up a few of his messes previously. And then in comes Mr. Muscle to rescue the girl who had called him. Mr. Muscle charges Jinho in front of his dad, but out of pure habit, the guy is put down without a single chance at rebellion. Once that's been done, Jinho is stared at by his father and the girl while Cho casually sips a drink. Yeah, he's used to this by now. She's more concerned that her grandfather's second disciple was taken out with just one move when Jinho warns her to leave with Big Brutish over here. His father comes to check that he's okay, and indeed, the boy is just fine. This incident wasn't the result of doing business, Papa Gang. This was just a girl being frightened of your monster of a son. Cho asks afterwards if he's really going to let them go that easily. And of course, the answer is no. But this is his father's shop and he'd rather not see it destroyed or damaged. Things are bad enough as is. Muscle for Brains wakes up that evening on a park bench where he wonders where he is and asks the girl if he was knocked out. Lose your memories from that punch too? Yes, you were knocked out. She had tried to stop him from doing something reckless, but he hadn't listened. For now, all he wants is a shot at revenge on Jinho, because of course he does. These characters never learn. The girl tells him not to do anything stupid now, as many eyes were watching. So he goes and puts a fist through the park bench. Later that evening after work, Jinho arrives to do battle. He really thought they would have run away by now, but I guess not. Someone has a petty revenge quota to fill and another beating to be had. He tells the girl, Hyunju, that it would be better for her to stay away from the battle for this. He's going to teach a harsh lesson to the protagonist. Oh, is that so? I got my popcorn and Pepsi. Now please, give me a good show. Having a plan laid out in his head, the meat man charges and gets a clean hit on Jinho? Wait, what? Nah, he's gonna be planning something for this. Jinho stands up from the bushes he was yeeted back into and thanks Meat Man for this punch, completely uninjured by the blow. Jinho almost got angry with him, which would be wrong since he wasn't the culprit here. Sorry in advance, guys. I'm doing the best I can with the translation. Jinho says that the real fight starts here, and to that effect, he gets into Meat Man's face without hesitation and blasts through his defense like toilet paper. Jinho is doing all this to a guy who is self-proclaimed to be the peak of the Korean martial artists. Yet with the single trick, he's one-punch man back into the coma he came out of. Back in the reader, Cho was warning Jinho that he should be careful of this guy as a marshal because he may have brought more people with him. But nah, don't worry, Secretary. That would only make things easier. Since it would be dangerous, Cho should wait here. With a murderer on the loose? Are you serious, Jinho? Cho is rightfully staying back while thinking how bad it would be if Jinho crosses the line and becomes a killer. But that won't happen. Hopefully. While he isn't going to kill anyone in a fight like this, what he would do is break his opponent's arm to stop them returning to active combat. I can almost hear that crunch and I hate it. His smile becomes very fitting to the name of demonic master. The girl asks him to just please stop. This was their fault and they were sorry it had ended like this. Stop? Oh, so the words I'm sorry were supposed to be the magic ones that halted all the bad things that happened to these guys? Since they were the ones who started this whole debacle, Jinho would be the one who decided when to end it. The meat man is trying his best to crawl away from the demonic master, begging for help, while the girl asks if he's trying to make the assembly his enemy. Does Jinho really think they would let him get away with this? Real question is, does he care? I don't think so. Also, get away? That's some really arrogant words she's using there, making it sound like he's the one who attacked them. Who was it that meddled with his life? And now she's asking if he thinks he'll get away with this? Jinho picks up and throws Meat Man through a nearby tree behind her to prove the point. And I'm surprised he's still alive at this point, much less intact. The girl is just standing there shivering at the sight. The girl stands there, shaking while Jinho asks her the question. Do you think I can get away with this? Going strong on his words, she had already ignored his warning and on top of that brought in a friend to cause him trouble. He's not planning to kill anyone, but she should really try not to faint. She's only saved by a clever Mr. Secretary who comes up behind Jinho, saying something to get his attention. Oh, it gets his attention all right. The red demonic master only has to turn around and look at Cho to see the poor guy blue in the face. Literally, before calming down and standing up to dust himself off. It really is cold out here, huh? Yeah, judging by all the ice he had to break. While the girl is trying to think of something, anything she can say, Jinho looks back down at her and asks if there's anything more she wants to do. She could bring in more friends for him to demolish, or maybe she'd like him to pay a visit to that assembly of hers? Nope. Well, okay then. He's done with her for today. Under his instruction, she would be back tomorrow with all their information on this astray guy, so Jinho could slaughter him back into the hell he came from. All she can really do is agree and watch the two men walk away while her bodyguard remains planted on the remains of a tree. Jinho and Cho walk down from the park as the protag laments that he couldn't control himself yet again. The Chi of Asura, the one-man art, his words not mine, that only the leader of the demonic cult was allowed to practice, was uncontrollable because his old body can't control the demonic force. He has to be very careful on how he uses it from now on, or it may just end up consuming him. But then he notices the poor secretary has not had a change of face since they left. Cho whips out his phone to type out a message, and the poor guy had his features literally frozen in fear by the pressure exuding off Jinho earlier. Paralysis by pressure. Kek. Jinho could fix it right now, though Cho declines as it would hurt quite a bit. He'd prefer to just wait out the nightmare. He's thanked for stopping the feisty firehead from ending someone back there, and is asked if he killed the guy. An easy no. He should still be alive. Should. That doesn't fill someone with confidence, dear Marshall. Does practicing martial arts really make one that tough? Yes, it strengthens the body over time. Considering his age, Cho doesn't have much room for improvement, but he could still be taught a few things. Perhaps Jinho could be his teacher and instant decline. Yeah, figures. Oh look, his face is back to normal now. The next night, Lee Hyun-ju appears before the cafe one more time, resolved to end this herself. Her grandpa could support her, but she couldn't divide their forces right now. The big bad Jinho spots her outside and invites her in, being polite enough that she wonders what the heck is wrong with him. Lack of people skills for one thing, albeit that's no fault of his own. After she orders a drink, she considers that this may just be a ploy to get the information in a nice way, as there's no way in hell that this is the same monster from that night. Though just him putting it on a table nearly gives her a heart attack. Understandable. Now then, it's time to get down to business. Where's that dirt on this astray guy? She hands Jinho the file they have on him and reiterates that he's likely the perpetrator for these horrible events of late, being housed by the Yeongnam in exchange for doing their dirty work. He used to be an ordinary martial artist a few years back, but somehow he'd learned the demonic variant and gone mad. But the ones who want his head aren't the group themselves, as they're only a contractor. Who really wants his head is the martial union that he'd upset within China. She proposes that just for the time being, they join forces, because if he's going after the Yeongnam and then gets taken out, the martial assembly is put at risk of a hostile takeover. They would keep the Yeongnam group at bay while he focused on getting rid of Astray, a benefit to both sides. Smart lady. Later that evening, Eun-young is getting home from work when Jinho remarks from the side that she's late. He just happened to see her arrival on his way out for a walk. He waits until she's done fawning over the protective older bro and heads out, telling her to get inside. After he'd gotten far enough away from home, Jinho then expands his sense of chi to an abnormally large degree, searching for any trace of Astray. As he's lost his mind, there wouldn't be any way for him to hide from the master. He cannot be allowed to take more victims in the city or anywhere else. If he squints hard enough, Jinho could make all of this out to be his fault. Just passively pushing people away wasn't the solution. Oh come on, I'm a shut-in and I can tell you that much, mate. If he was just more active about this matter, maybe Jaehyun would still be alive. Making his way to the park from the other evening, he sits on a bench and vents the little rage that built up inside. Normal life this time? Thrown one punch too many for that, my guy. And then he senses it. Astray has stepped into Jinho's rangefinder and triggered alarm bells of every kind. There you are, says Jinho, ready to go and kick some demented butt. Following the trail until he reaches an old apartment complex, the scent of rotten blood is smeared across every wall and part of this underground structure. No doubt, this was Astray's hiding place. Sensing the guy above him before either can react, Jinho states the obvious, that this dude is the murderer. It jumps down to the floor and begins babbling on about the question and broken knowledge, showing that they have indeed lost their mind. Jinho only asks if they had killed a woman recently, to which it asks what kind, and has Jinho pick from the corpse pile behind it. Oh yeah, Jinho is gonna kick him where the sun don't shine, though it seems to think that he's the one who's gonna die. No, while Astray seems to think that this is just a little boy caught up in his web yet again, even powering up and speaking in a tone of childish glee, I don't think it's gonna end well for him. Destroying the stonework beneath their feet as an intimidation tactic to try getting Jinho's stoic face to change, Astray blindly attacks the protagonist, thinking he'd be invulnerable just like every other time. Jinho's inner demon talks to him, reminding that all he needed to do was let go and put this thing into the ground already. His hopes of a normal life have been shattered, and he's stuck with people like this showing up in his life now, one after another. How long will he bear it? Until all his family and all his friends are dead? Shut up. I decide what I want to do. An explosion suddenly blows Astray's arm off, and the thing doesn't even flinch in pain, just being glad that it still has its left arm. I don't think so. Not if Jinho's afterimage is anything to go by. Omoe wa mo. Yeah, you get the point. Now without either of his self-defense tools, it only takes one hit to the temple for the Astray to get sent recoiling back into a brick wall. Jinho shows no mercy in attacking again, remarking that since they'd lost their mind, they felt no pain. He's gonna fix that for you real quick. Such a nice guy. Putting fingers of black smoky chi against Astray's body, Jinho says that it's time they learned the real meaning of the fear known as him. It takes not even a few seconds before the former human is screeching out in pain. We get a glimpse of how he'd learned the demonic martial arts here as well. Someone had handed him the book. Astray tries to cry out that he's not a bad person. It was all the fault of the arts. But Jinho silences him very quickly, knowing what he wants to say. The good news is that Jinho won't kill them. But the bad news is that Jinho won't kill them. Sometimes, death is a luxury. While his father reads the news with glasses, Papa Gong remarks that the serial killer should have been brought to justice by the law. But perhaps this was God themselves taking care of business. Yeah, let's roll with that. Anyhow, with them opening for the morning, Secretary Cho is there to greet Jinho and have a chat with him about some things. Almost immediately, he calls out that the serial killer is dead and suspects Jinho of doing the deed, which he absolutely seems guilty for. But the topic is then redirected to why Cho was here looking for him. And apparently, it's some kind of good news. Since he's done with his military service, college was next, yes? Yes, but before Jinho can mention what his plans are, Cho brings up that he may be having a hard time earning school credit this season. So today he had brought Jinho a plan to get that credit in this current situation. What are you, a suspicious salesman? After Cho has pulled out all the papers, he says aloud that Jae-kyung would support him with full payment for a startup. Jinho stops him right there and to ask, why a startup? In short, Cho plans for Jinho to use the credit system that the Jae-kyung University has in place to get some real experience. But sadly, Jinho is going to be taking winter classes instead. He doesn't need this extra work when he can just go back to school like everyone else. The more he thinks about it, the less efficient of a way it becomes to gain those credits in comparison to just doing winter classes. He ain't doing the startup, sorry secretary. Cut back to Cho's conversation with Chairman Jung, and we learned that the two were planning on having him in Jae-kyung's management. The big boss assumed Cho had a plan in case he was refused as well, and is told not to worry. But can you take a guess at what that plan B involves? Becoming a toddler begging Jinho to do what he wants, that's what. And I thought Astray was a man-child. At least he had insanity as an excuse. But no matter the crying or nagging, he just won't give in. Cho even tries the old, my job is on the line tactic, which does nothing but annoy the protagonist even more. What they don't seem to realize is that everyone out front can hear them, as nothing here is soundproofed. Mama Gong then comes in looking a little frantic, asking if Jinho is busy much today. No, why? Well, when he comes out with Cho still attached to his leg like a bad tumor, she asks him to deliver some compact foundations to his sister in need. Okay, and where is she now? A 4-hour drive away, that's where. Skip to Eunyoung getting off the phone, and we get a glimpse of a new lady who don't look half bad. Yonha. Jinho arrives not too long after this with what she needs, and his sister invites him inside, saying she can't come out right now. He walks down to greet her, and apparently his speed was thanks to his new driver's license. Oh dear God, no. The flashbacks. That poor instructor. But while Eunyoung is introducing Yonha to her brother, the actress is told that today's filming shoot would be cancelled. One of their actors couldn't make it. But before he can escape, Jinho is approached by Yonha to fill in the role. It's only a 3-minute part, she says. But no matter what they try to pull to get him into the role, Jinho still isn't doing any of it. Guess he had enough of being juggled around. They beg and plead for him to stay, but Jinho is already walking out. But then it's mentioned that if this show gets off to a bumpy start, it could start affecting his sister's career as an actress. She has his attention now. In short, if this show fails, Eunyoung may not be casted for other shows. The show also has quite a weak introduction overall, so they're looking for visuals that will make up for it. In their case, male actors are also more important. Okay, skipping forward a bit, let's see, here we are. One of the staff says that casting Jinho is a good idea in the moment, but would it really work? Yes, because he's real overprotective of his little sister. She leveraged that to get him looking fancy. But as it turns out, Jinho is really not good at acting. Let's break up. They reshoot the scene over and over, but no matter the director's attempts at getting a good performance, he just can't seem to get it right, as you heard me attempt to convey. In the end, they opt to change the filming time to that evening. Later, as the day fades to night with the golden glow sinking below the edge of the skies, Yona is yelling at her manager for some reason, while Eunyoung and Jinho stand to one side. The atmosphere, people sighing every time he makes a mistake, he really can't do this, huh? They've already reached take 163. That's just how many times they tried to redo this. Eunyoung apologizes to her big brother for getting him stuck here the entire day, saying the same line over and over. But he just asks what's so tough about saying the same line over and over. No, he's not just saying that to make her feel better. The fact is, they basically begged him to stay over and do something that he didn't want to, so he doesn't need to concern himself with their problems. A kind of punishment, I guess. But he's actually not doing any of this on purpose. He's just that darn bad at acting. But on stepping outside, there's a real commotion out at the barrier wall they set up for the film. Cho has come for Jinho once more, and he's trying to get in, claiming to be a manager for one of the siblings. Some producer asks who Cho is yet again, and he gets so sick of it that he just flips a business card. Code Entertainment, the agency that Eunyoung is from. First, he wants to see the recorded takes. While the director goes to get them, Jinho remarks that he did call Cho, but this was such a fast reply. But of course, the best secretary has to be on their toes. Plus, when Jinho sends any kind of text saying he has a problem, of course his secretary is going to jump on the chance to get brownie points. Once all the takes were there, he asks how Jinho was supposed to act out this line. Yona gives an example, and Cho begins watching every take they shot so far. He finally picks one that the team would go with, saying it was perfect. But the lead just asks if he's crazy in trying to use any of these. The lip sync, atmosphere, blah blah was on point. Now all they had to do to fix the issue of his voice was dub over it. This makes the entire set freeze with all the time they realize just went to waste. I can only imagine the director's face at this point. Cho asks why they all went silent, but is told immediately that they can do that. The director would make it happen no matter what. With that, Jinho is ready to go home, and Cho asks for a favor in return for helping him out with this thing. He'd really wanted to drive the shiny new car at least once. So how was his first day working with people he don't know? Annoying, that's how. But it's the kind of thousandfold pressure he won't have to worry about if he becomes his own boss, and nuh-uh, he's still not doing a startup. Upon getting home this time though, we're greeted to a fresh sight as out of the woodwork crawls Young-gi from the military. They step inside as good old buds, only for Jinho to see his father getting yelled at by a fanboy of his sister. Oh no, my bro, you don't want to do that. But before Jinho can give him a right butt kicking, Young-gi says not to worry as he'll take care of this for him. Excuse me, he says to the kid. The brat legit turns around like a Karen and comes face to face with someone who looks like they just left the Korean mafia. Needless to say, face to face with someone twice his size and power, the boy doesn't have a lot more to say. So what does he go and do instead? Why, push Jinho's dad, of course. You are the luckiest man on earth that you ain't dealing with this frankly OP son at this point, boy. Needless to say, Big E doesn't appreciate the notion of an older gentleman like Papa Gang getting pushed around. The boy is taken outside so his story can be listened to, and later, he apologizes endlessly. But jumping all the way across the city very briefly, we get the tidbit that Yona is a bit more interested in Jinho than she had let on. We learn later that his dad also let the crazy fanboy go, as there was no real point in stirring up trouble. Papa Gang had contacted Secretary Cho, sure that he'd take care of it for now. Big Gi then asks how Jinho is the exact same now as in the military. The big oaf doesn't understand the question, but in essence he's doing the exact same things. Gi grabs the phone and asks if he can have a talk outside. So they head out and Gi correctly assumes that his friend was about to take care of that rude customer himself. He says not to make the call as his dad had already taken care of it. Then he puts a hand on Jinho's shoulder, asking a real good question to the stumped protagonist. Do you know how much of a pain it is for people in the bottom if the top head makes a move for every trivial matter? They can take care of themselves. They don't need some kind of hero trying to save the day 24/7. If he keeps doing this because he doesn't want to risk others getting it wrong, then he'll only end up doing things within his reach forever. He'd be someone who ends up on top of a lot of people. His problem is that he doesn't trust other people. How are they supposed to trust him when he has zero faith in their abilities? This is why the Blue Demon betrayed him. He'd never trusted the guy and just tried to do everything himself. When they go back inside, he practices what he just learned by telling Cho that he could deal with this on his own. He's just got to make sure he does it with confidence, and likely an air of elegance.